here's the review previews for 717. So it says what central angle measured degrees corresponds to the distance from 7 pi over 3. So it's actually 420 degrees. So this is what other angles will take you to the same point. So pi over 3 will, because 420, if we subtract 360 from that, we get 60. And it's basically pi plus any of that. So if we continue to keep going around 2 pi, I'm saying 360 degrees each time, we're going to get the same amount. So we can actually write that as pi over 3 plus 2 pi n, where n is a whole number. So make a sketch of the unit circle showing the resulting triangle. So there's my unit circle. The triangle would be right here. So then find the sine of each one. So the sine of 7 pi over 3 is going to be the same as the sine of pi over 3, which is the square root of 3 over 2. The cosine is 1/2. And the sine, or the tangent, is the square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2, or the square root of 3 over 2 times 2 over 1. These cancel, so it equals the square root of 3. 105, evaluate each of the following trig expressions without using a calculator. Do at least 3. So 180 degrees is going to be pi, or 0. So sine of 180 is 0, which is the same as pi. Sine of 360 degrees is going to be 0 as well. Negative 90 would be the same as 270. So it is, the sine is 0, negative 1. So the answer is negative 1. 510. So if I did 510 minus 360, I'm going to get 150. If I did that minus 180 minus 150, try to figure out my reference angle, I get 30 degrees. So 30 sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Cosine of 90 degrees is 1. And the tangent of negative 90 is actually undefined. Problem 107, convert each of the following angle measures. Give exact answers. So 7 pi over 6 is 210. And the way to figure these out is I could do 180 divided by 6 times 7. 180 divided by 6 is going to be 30. 30 times 7 gives me 210 degrees. So 5 pi over 3, I'm going to do 180 divided by 3, which is going to be 60 times 5 is going to be 300 degrees. 45 degrees. So I know 45 degrees is halfway between 90, and 90 is pi over 2. So it's pi over 4. 100 degrees, I could write a proportion. I could do pi over 180 is equal to r over 100. And then I cross multiply, I get 100 pi divided by 180 equals r. So it simplifies down to 9 over, or 5 over 9. Pi over 9. So 810 degrees. So I just kept subtracting 360 to see where I would end up. So I actually ended up at 90. So I ended up with 9 pi over 2. Another way to do it, though, would be to write a proportion. So I can do pi over 180 equals r over 810. And if I solve that, I'd get 9 pi over 2. And 7 pi over 2 is 630 degrees. So do 180 divided by 2, 90, 90 times 7. Problem 108, sketch this graph, write the inverse, and also sketch the inverse graph. So this is at -1, 0. So here's where my change is. And then I can put another point here, another point here. So it's going to go like this. So I know my inverse goes over y equals x. So my inverse graph is actually going to look kind of like this. And the equation for the inverse, so I would change it to x equals 1/2 y plus 1 cubed. So multiply, so I get 2x. Then I take the cube root. So minus 1, minus 1. So I get f to the negative 1 of x equals the cube root of 2x minus 1. 109, rewriting graphing form. So I move the 34 over, because I'm going to complete the square. Pulled out a 2, so I get x squared minus 8x. I'm going to add something to both sides. So I'm going to complete my square. So it's minus 4, x minus 4. So it's 16 I'm going to add. So I add 16 over here, but I'm going to add double 16 to the other side. I'm actually going to add 32. So I get negative 2. It's two groups of x minus 4 squared. So my graphing form is f of x equals two groups of x minus 4 squared plus 2. For angle theta in the third quadrant, cosine is a negative 12 over 13. Use this information to solve the values without a calculator. So we are going to use our Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to do it in a positive fashion and then change it to a negative later. So in order to find x, I'm going to do 1 squared minus 12/13 squared equals x squared. So I get 1 minus 144 over 169. So it ends up being 25 over 169. So the square root of that equals 5 over 13. So sine of theta is 5 over 13. And it's in the third quadrant, so it would be negative 5 over 13. So then tangent, I'm going to do sine, or 5 over 13, divided by 12 over 13. They're both negative, but a negative divided by a negative is going to be positive. So I do 5 over 13 times 13 over 12. Those cancel out, and I get 5 over 12.